Today we are going, well, we're going deep into universal truths, ancient stories, and why pretty much every great story you've ever loved is, at its core, the same story.
Yeah.
We are unlocking the profound work of Joseph Campbell.
And this is a deep dive that really asks us to look past, just the surface of the hero with 1,000 faces. Our source material today, its analysis from the Sindhu Veda Research Institute transcripts, gives us a really crucial lens.
Hmm.
It focuses on Campbell's early, intense immersion in Eastern philosophy. So our mission, really, is to trace that intellectual journey. How did he synthesize Indian thought into his work? And what did his final words on myth tell us about, well, the human experience itself?
That context from the Research Institute is so important because when we talk about Campbell's guilty attraction to Indian spirituality, we're not just talking about some light reading he did on the side.
Not at all.
This was a foundational scholarly commitment that happened way before his theories became, popular.
Exactly. What makes his argument so powerful is that his framework wasn't just pulled from, say, Greek epics or Arthurian legend. It was built on decades of this intense, really detailed engagement with philosophy from the East. He didn't just borrow ideas, he collaborated to bring them into English.
Okay, let's unpack this
Yeah.
because the sources really highlight his dedication. He translated the Upanishads, not alone, but alongside Swami Nikhilananda.
Right.
He also worked extensively on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. For anyone listening, if you want that aha moment,
Yeah.
this isn't just trivia. This is the key to understanding the monomyth.
It absolutely is the engine, because when you translate texts like the Upanishads, you have to grapple with the core concept of Advaita Vedanta, this non-dualistic unity of reality.
Oh.
Essentially, the idea that the individual soul, Atman, is fundamentally the same as the universal soul, Brahman.
So if the inner experience of a person is basically one with the cosmic experience, then it has to follow that the stories we tell about that experience must also be, deep down, unified.
Precisely. That is the intellectual leap that gave birth to the monomyth. Campbell realized that the journey of the hero, the whole adventure, is just a magnified, large-scale reflection of the essential rites of passage that every single human goes through.
Puberty, marriage.
Puberty, marriage, grief, changing careers. The journey is universal because, he argued, our internal spiritual architecture is universal.
And this structure, the monomyth, is what makes his work such an incredible tool. It's this recurring sequence, and Campbell laid out these really specific mandatory stages. The whole thing is vast. It has the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, but it all boils down to 3 core phases. You can't skip them.
Those 3 are the skeleton key, the universal rhythm. So the first is separation. The hero must be pulled away, or they have to actively leave their normal, safe world atmosphere to even begin.
You have to sever ties with the known.
It's a necessary severance.
Then you enter the crucible, initiation. This is the hard part. The period of trials, the challenges, you meet magical helpers, and it all culminates in achieving the great boon.
Right. The boon could be anything, a treasure, a piece of knowledge, or even self-realization, like enlightenment.
And then finally, the stage that I think gets overlooked so often, but for Campbell it was critical, the return.
So important.
The hero can't be satisfied, the journey isn't over, until they bring that boon, that new understanding, back to the community they left. The transformation is incomplete unless it's shared.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the source material we're working with uses the perfect, maybe the starkest example to illustrate why these stages are so necessary. The life of the Buddha.
The Buddha's journey is maybe the purest form of this pattern, isn't it? Especially because his story hinges on such an extreme sacrifice.
It really does.
Yeah.
So if we break it down with Campbell's terms, the separation is just dramatic. He's a prince, sheltered from everything, has every comfort imaginable. His detachment isn't just leaving home, it's leaving his young wife and his newly born child.
Yeah.
That act, that is the complete shedding of the world atmosphere. It's what he had to do to begin the quest.
But that raises a really important question, one that I think you listening might be having. If the first step to becoming a hero is abandoning your family, doesn't that make the monomyth kind of, selfish, antisocial?
It's a sharp question, and it really challenges the morality of the whole thing. We tend to think of heroes as people who protect others, right?
External action.
Exactly. But Campbell's perspective, which is so deeply influenced by the East, would say the separation is mainly an internal sacrifice. It's a psychological or spiritual act.
So it's not about rejecting society forever.
No, it's about a necessary but temporary shedding of the ego. of the attachments that define your ordinary life. You can't gain universal knowledge while you're still holding on to all these specific, localized things. The goal isn't abandonment. It's transformation for the eventual benefit of the world.
Which brings us right back to the Buddha. The initiation is clear. He achieves enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. He gets the ultimate knowledge, the central boon of his entire journey.
And the proof that the separation wasn't just permanent abandonment is all in the return.
The sources remind us he lived for 45 more years after that moment. He died at age 80, and he spent those decades walking, teaching, preaching his faith. He didn't just retire to a cave.
He gave it all back.
He dedicated the rest of his life to giving that knowledge back. That 45-year mission is the ultimate proof of the monomyth's third stage.
And this pattern, separation, initiation, return, it's so powerful because you start seeing it everywhere. And just to connect back to the literary side for a second, we should remember Campbell borrowed the title The Hero with a Thousand Faces from James Joyce.
From Finnegan's Wake.
From Finnegan's Wake, yeah.
Yeah.
A magnificent, dense book. It's just a little reminder that these universal stories exist across, well, every domain of human creativity.
Absolutely. The hero is the same character, just wearing 1,000 different names, or as Campbell would later call it, wearing 1,000 different masks.
And that transition from the universal pattern of the hero to the universal meaning behind the symbols, that brings us right to his next major work, The Masks of God.
This was his massive comparative study of Oriental and Occidental mythology.
And the fundamental question he was tackling there was, okay, if the heroic pattern is the same everywhere, why do the stories, the gods, the rituals look so radically different?
And his answer was, it was profound, but also so simple.
It was.
All these cultures, East and West, ancient and modern, they're all just dealing with the same eternal truth. They're all trying to articulate, to personify what he called the one principle.
So all the gods, the goddesses, the saints, the spiritual figures, they aren't unique beings in the deepest sense. They're simply the masks of eternity.
The masks change with the climate, the history, the local culture.
But the underlying reality they're all pointing to, that unified universal consciousness, that doesn't change. It's immutable.
That shift in focus, from analyzing the story structure in the monomyth to understanding the cultural purpose with the masks, it's so vital. If myth isn't literal history, then what is it for? What does it do for us?
And Campbell's argument was that myth's job is to create an experience of that eternal truth. He had this wonderful analogy to explain the difference between just understanding a myth intellectually and actually feeling its impact.
The church example.
The church example, exactly. I said, imagine a person entering a church or any sacred space. They leave the noise of the outside world behind. They step into this calm, serene atmosphere. And while they're inside, they have an inward experience. It touches them profoundly.
Like listening to music or reading poetry.
Just like that. Then they exit the church. Physically, they're the same person. They haven't been given some new historical fact or a moral lesson they didn't already know. But the experience has happened. It's changed their feeling state.
It's like listening to a symphony. You might not know a single scale or chord progression, but the feeling, the transcendent resonance, that's what matters. Myth, in that sense, isn't instruction. It's spiritual music.
And he traced how that spiritual function adapted over human history. He saw this evolution from the hunting stage of society, where myth was all about the violence of killing, the sacrifice of the animal to ensure life continues, to the agricultural stage.
Right, because the agricultural stage gave people this completely new insight into the cycle of life. They were physically watching life emerge from a seed, from the soil.
And the mythic focus shifted radically. It moved from the sacrifice of life to the eternal cycle of birth and regeneration, death as a prerequisite for rebirth.
That's a critical insight because it shows that myth's ultimate function is psychological. It gives meaning to these unavoidable cycles of death and rebirth that happen not just in the harvest, but in our own inner lives.
The death of old habits, the rebirth of a new understanding.
Exactly. Myth gives us the emotional, visceral language to process those really difficult transitions.
And that entire journey brings us to Campbell's final and maybe most widely known work, The Power of Myth, the famous dialogues he had with the journalist Bill Moyers.
Right, which were published posthumously in 1988, just after Campbell passed away in 1987.
And in these final conversations, you can feel him moving beyond the academic structure. He's offering his ultimate, most poetic and accessible definition of what mythology really is for humanity.
He calls it the music of the universe. and the music of experience.
Hmm.
It's the deep vibration that underlies everything we see and feel.
And if it is a music, he argued, then it is the homeland of poetry. Mythology is what inspires all the great arts because its deepest purpose is to let us consciously see oneself participating in that poem, to feel our own lives resonating inside that cosmic song.
Which loops us back so beautifully to where we started, to the Upanishads and the one principle. The masks are different, whether we call it God, Brahman, the Tao.
It doesn't matter.
The name doesn't matter. But the music, that core resonance of unity and experience, that stays the same.
And that focus on the experience over rigid doctrine, it's captured in this wonderful little anecdote from the sources about the Shinto priest. In Shintoism, they often don't use idols or have this elaborate dogmatic theology. Instead, they dance. The physical expressive act of the dance is the connection to the eternal principle. It happens not through belief, but through a physical, felt, mythic experience.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, in your life today? Joseph Campbell, through all his work across East and West, gives us this profound skeleton key to the universal human experience. His work really assures us that while the cultural masks we all wear are constantly changing, the underlying song, the story of the hero's struggle for transformation, that is eternally the same.
And ultimately what Campbell teaches us is that if you want to genuinely know the real meaning of myth, you have to prepare yourself. You have to get your senses ready, not just your mind, with what he called comparative knowledge. It isn't enough to know one great story.
Yeah.
You have to see the threads connecting them all to really grasp the whole tapestry of human consciousness.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to end on. Campbell's monomyth demands that crucial first step, separation, a sacrifice of the known before the initiation can even begin. And we rarely think of gaining knowledge as requiring a loss first.
So think about what you're currently holding on to. A belief, a comfortable certainty, a defined identity. What personal separation, what necessary sacrifice might be required for you to embark on your own metaphorical journey of deep knowledge? And ultimately, what enlightenment will you bring back in the return? Consider what you might need to leave behind to truly begin.